Since the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, the federal government of Nigeria and indeed President Muhammadu Buhari have all demonstrated their commitment to ensure that the goals are successfully implemented in Nigeria and attained by the target date of 2030. Hello and welcome to Agenda 2030. My name is Desmond Utome. And remember, on this very program, you can always join us on our social media handles currently rolling on your screen. And when we come back, we'll launch you on an interview with the Director of Strategic Communication of the Buhari's campaign organization, Barrister Festus Keyamo, who will be taking us through what the government has been doing to ensure that the development goals are well implemented to the interest and benefit of all Nigerians. Do stay with us. And here we have with us the Director of Strategic Communications and the spokesperson of the Buhari campaign organization in the person of Barrister Festus Keyamo. So would you want to just quickly lead us into what you would consider some of the very sterling performances of Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari in line with how he has tried to give development to the country since he came in over 3 years ago?
Well, I think overall, one of the strongest points of this president has been the deliberate attempt to diversify the economy from this kind of mono economy that we have always depended upon. And by so doing, the president has deliberately drawn up plans and implemented those plans to develop the agricultural sector. One of them is the ANCOS Borrowers Program. The ANCOS Borrowers Program of the Central Bank of Nigeria seeks to give loans to small-time farmers, rice farmers, and other different types of farmers to also boost their trade. And so far, 82 billion naira has been made available by the Central Bank to about 350,000 farmers in that regard to expand the agricultural sector. And we are beginning to see the immediate results of that. One of the immediate results is the increased production in local rice. In fact, that's what they call the rice revolution now in Nigeria. The rice revolution is so good that our imports, our local production has increased from about 2.4 million metric tons per annum to about 4 million metric tons per annum. And then the corresponding gain in that is that import has dropped drastically too. Import of foreign rice has dropped so drastically now that the volume is so negligible. Now, one immediate gain of that too is that we have also, been able to preserve foreign exchange, a number of foreign exchange, because we used to plough a lot of foreign exchange into the importation of rice, and so the federal government has been able to save a lot of money in that regard too. As part of that initiative, to expand the agricultural sector, the federal government has also decided to cut down on the importation of fertilizer. And how did you do this? It was very simple. All along, most of the fertilizer blending plants in the country virtually went comatose because over the years, the federal government, depended solely on the importation of fertilizer. This president said, look, we can produce fertilizer within the country. So why are we importing fertilizer? It was just because we had one critical component of the production of fertilizer missing in Nigeria, and that is phosphate. The president went to Morocco, spoke with the king of Morocco, struck a deal with him, at a very, friendly, deal, and decided to bring in that particular, component into Nigeria so that we can, revive our fertilizer blending plants. So far, so good. About 16 fertilizer blending plants have been revived in the country as a result of that. And that has created a lot of jobs for people. Unfortunately, of course, we do agree that the number of people that are churned out every year, graduates, skilled labor, they are far more, the volume is far more than the level at which we provide jobs. But it didn't start yesterday, but we are getting there. However, the president has also not stopped there. The exportation of these agricultural produce has also been, part of the scheme. So it's not only increasing production, we want to end foreign exchange now from this, production. So far, so good. For over the years, this is the first time that we are earning so much in agricultural exports. In the first quarter of 2018 alone, by the National Bureau of Statistics, we earned about $577 billion, representing about 12% of our total export. Before, agricultural products did not contribute as much as that. Non-oil exports. Before, oil was taking as much as 90-something% of total exports earnings. But now oil has, agriculture has added to that. And agriculture, like I said, for that quarter, contributed 12.8% of our total export of about 1.4 trillion so far that we exported. That is the kind of initiative that the president has developed to boost agriculture. There's so many of them, of course, so many of them. They're also encouraging local farmers to also sell their products within by the school feeding program. Because the school feeding program, which is part of the SIP, that's another thing altogether, but that is captured within the social investment program. That particular component is captured. But that component also boosts agriculture too, because that component of the school feeding program says that, look, we want to give 1 meal, nutritious meal per day to school children. But however, the meal must be homegrown. It's not going to be imported food. So it's also encouraging local farmers.
It must also be very fresh.
Very fresh too. So they will take them straight from the farm, cook them and give to the children. So it is also encouraging local farmers, apart from exports. The government is buying off those products, buying them off. So they have a ready market in the government, paying for those products, cooking those products, and then we have cooks also employed to cook those food and serve the children. So that, of course, that component of the social investment program has also boosted agriculture a lot. So it's been a wonderful ride so far, so good. But that is actually the path of growth. We are not there yet, but you can see that it is a conscious and deliberate effort, never done before in the history of this country, to actually develop that sector.
Well, you've spoken so much about what the president has done in the area of agriculture and possibly the SIP. Little about the SIP.
SIP is much more expansive. I can go into that.
I understand.
That's just a small component.
The agriculture, what they're doing in agriculture. But I'm more interested in, how would you say this Anchor Borrowers program and every other step that has been taken by Mr. President in the area of agricultural revolution really impacted in the ordinary Nigerian in terms of lifting them out of poverty?
You can see that I told you before that many people who had abandoned farming in the north, except you are not part of the farming family, those who had abandoned farming in the north, especially in the north, who they are much into farming, and the middle belt, many of them, they ran back to their farms to revive their farms. The moment fertilizer was available, the moment the Anchor Borrowers program was available, they all ran back to their farms. Bringing a bit of politics into this, it was part of these people that gathered 45 million naira to come and pay for the president's farm. But they were beaten to it by another group because they were so happy that they were praying to God that the president should run again. They need the president more than he needs them, more. So they gathered money. It was these same rice farmers. That's to tell you how much it impacted on them. If it did not impact on them, they will not be so anxious. And it's not hidden. They all came out openly and said they want to do this. And they're identifiable. They're going, So the point is that now you can see that little by little, the price of rice has begun to drop. It's going to drop because there will be competitiveness within. What we had before was artificial. We were just buying rice, importing them, buying rice and importing them. And it was not sustainable in the long run because we were spending so much of our foreign currency. Right now, I can speak with you. You can see that the price of rice that went up before, it has begun to come down. It has begun to come down. And I can show you, as competitiveness and local production continues to increase, it's going to be so affordable to the poor man. So it is like it took, India, for example, and China, about more than 30 years now to begin to pull their people out of poverty. You can see that India and China started theirs in the 90s when they started to put a critical infrastructure in place. They went industrial. The industrial revolution of China began and all of that. But right now, you can see their level of poverty is coming down. We have not started that part since. What we were doing before, we were living false lives because we're top-heavy in terms of having money in our pockets, taking the money abroad, spending them on irrelevancies, and coming back and say we're enjoying. Whereas our infrastructure were decaying. They were decaying. For instance, in the 16 years before Buhari took over, there was no rail line that was fully complete. The only one that they did fully last, before they left, was 80% complete, which was Abuja-Kaduna Rail. I mean, is it not shocking that for 16 years, one full rail line, just between two towns, was not even complete, whereas the whole world is going rail now? But that is the kind of, lack of vision, misplaced priorities that they had for the first 16 years.
Just to stop you a little bit there, because we're coming to talk about what you're putting in place in terms of infrastructure.
We're coming, I want to come to that now.
That's another very key area in terms of the sustainable development goals. But let's still dwell a little bit more on the no poverty and zero hunger area, which he's doing. All right. If he's giving so much attention to agriculture, like you've already said, there's still a huge number of persons that are still possibly living below the poverty line.
That is exactly what I was coming to.
Yeah. So
because
what is it doing deliberately to lift those people out of it?
We were
in addition to those already farmers.
We were talking recently, about the rating of Nigeria as one of the poorest countries in the world. And I, said that if you look at the statistics in 2009, 2012, and the statistics you have now, you can see that it has been a case of gradual progression. So it's not that it jumped in the last 3 years. I want to get that clear first before we now know. Because we cannot appreciate the progress being made if we don't know where we're coming from. If you do a fact check now as I speak, those listening to me, if you do a fact check for 2009 and what the World Bank said in 2009, we were 84. We're doing 84 million of extremely poor people in 2009. Extremely poor people. Despite the height, despite the volume of oil we're producing, despite the cash we're getting from oil at that time. In 2009, and that's no less than the World Bank, not me, saying it. We're doing 84-point-something million. Now, in 2012, also do this fact check. The BBC there reported, the National Bureau of Statistics in Nigeria, that we're doing 100 million of extremely poor people in 2012. And that was when we're supposed to be the strongest economy in Africa. How did that happen? Because it was an artificial growth at that time when they said we're the strongest economy. It was not an all-inclusive growth. It was just a growth that was generated because of the high oil prices. It went up to $140-something at that time. It's the highest in the history of oil. And then we also had full production of 2.3 million barrels per day. And so we had never achieved that full production before because of the restiveness in Niger Delta region. So we achieved full production. So it was because of that type of earning at that time they said, oh, biggest economy. But no, it was not an all-inclusive growth. It did not include other critical sectors of the economy. So it was an artificial growth. And guess what? Immediately after that rebasement, as they call it, or rebasing, as they called it, Nigeria began to drop because oil price began to drop. And that was when Okonjo-Iweala began to warn everybody at that time that we were headed for danger. Not me, it was her. Their own finance minister was warning that we were headed for danger. So the progression at that point went up to 100 million extremely poor people in 2012. Now, what the government has done so far now to fight that program, to fight that poverty, is to first of all institute the social investment program. As I speak with you, 12 million Nigerians are caught within that program. They have been trapped within the social investment program. And within that program, that 12 million Nigerians are trapped, you have about 9 million who have 1 meal per day. 1 million children. That's the one direct way to fight poverty first, to ensure that children go to school. If you see that the number of children who are going to school, who are not going to school, have dropped from about 10 million or so to about 8 million since this program started, because you got more children going to school. Why they were not going to school in rural areas is that they had to go and look for their daily meal at a point. They have to go and hawk. They have to follow them to the farm, and so they could not go to school. Now, the parents can go to school because now they know that their children will feed at school. So they push them to school. So the number dropped a bit to about 8 million children. And education is one of the best ways to fight poverty. When you educate your children, you feed them in school, you encourage them to go to school, you are fighting poverty. Secondly, they now give small loans. And the kind of loans they give are the loans that target not just the small artisans. We are talking of even the extremely poor people. People who can survive on 5,000 to boost their trade. They are giving them as small as 10,000. If a woman, some women, the kind of tomatoes they set at times in front of their houses. You won't believe that the total value of that pan of tomatoes or that tray of tomatoes, the total value at times is not more than 2,000 or 3,000 naira. Total value of that, you won't believe. They survive on that. So people think that 10,000 naira is a joke. No. To that woman, 10,000 naira is a lot of money. She will now buy three more trays or 4 more trays. She can sell all of them a day. And guess what? It is zero collateral. When she pays them back, the 10,000 within 6 months, she will get 30,000, she'll go 50,000, she'll get 100,000. She's increasing her trade. So that is what they call the trader money. It goes to as small as that. You know, some people have confused it to say, no, you are just giving people handouts to feed. No.
Yeah, I was just going to ask.
You're not giving people handouts. It's not handouts because you are boosting their trade.
Yeah, can that actually lift them out of poverty?
But that's what I just explained.
It's not going to keep recycling this generational cost.
But I told you that it is increasing. It is increasing their trade because the more you pay back, the more you go to the next level and the next level and the next level again.
What is the expectation? Like how many years do you think it will take to get them out of real poverty?
For now, it is solving that problem for now because you need to solve that problem now first. Because you won't move somebody immediately from 0 to 1 billion. You will not. Let us be honest about that. You won't move somebody from 0 to 1 billion. You won't move everybody in Nigeria. It has to be strata by strata. Strata by strata. And how do you do that? For those who are extremely rich, you overtax them. And that's why more people are caught within the tax net now. It's also fighting poverty because the very rich are caught within the tax net. You can see before, I think we're doing how many? Before I don't get the figures right now. We're doing 6 or 7 million taxpayer, but we've increased to about 19 or so. I am not sure of the figures, but I'll get the figures correctly. But we have increased more than quadruple of those figures before because more people are back in the tax net, even the very big ones. And so they are paying more for the government to fund the poor. And so they have to bridge the gap. The real problem in society is to bridge that gap between the very rich and the very poor. You're not going to bridge it overnight to say everybody should come and be equilibrium.
Is that
you are going to move them gradually from that level, gradually from that. And it's not handout. There are those who cannot feed, who cannot walk, who are incapacitated. Those ones, they call them the extremely vulnerable, old, weak women, for instance, who can no longer trade even. They are still caught within that net. No government has gone beyond small-time traders before. Even the UWIN and all that they used to talk before, they stopped at the small-time traders. We have gone beyond. The government has gone beyond the small-time traders, and there are some class of people beyond those small-time traders. They call them the extremely vulnerable. No government has put its sight on those people before, who can no longer work, who are weak, who can only stay at home, and they are still giving them 5,000 per month to come out of that state, to survive at that level. That is extremely commendable. You would have also the Empower scheme within the SIP. The Empower scheme empowers even graduates by training them to have technical skills. Because some people will rely on these white-collar jobs, stay at home, put on tie every morning, and they're going around looking for jobs. Whereas they can sustain themselves. They can sustain themselves by small time. So the Empower scheme trains them in small time, craft making and, all kinds of, trade. And they are giving 30,000 per month to start off. 30,000 naira per month to start off and boost their trade. So they are also addressing that level of it. What about the women in the traders in our area market, for instance, in the East? The federal government said, look, what we're going to do is that ensure that because in Aba, we have the hub of production in the entire East, hub of production of, things. They need power. What the government do? In specialized markets, in selected markets, they say you must have lights from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock uninterrupted. I think they have introduced, they use solar for that, solar power. 8 to 5. The last time the vice president went to the market went berserk for him. They were all screaming and screaming and they just wanted to touch him because they had never seen it like that happen in their lives. That is the way to address poverty. It's not to give people handouts. It's not to go and buy delegates with dollars at conventions. It is to address critical sectors of the economy, increase critical investment in critical infrastructure, diversify the economy, ensure that people have money to boost their trade at the smallest level. It's going to take time to pull them out. Like I said, it's taken India about 30 years now, but you have to direct a nation's focus back to the track. We have gone off the track long ago. we had gone off the track. Some people say, bring back corruption. We just want money to spend. We just want money to spend, and that is wrong. It is wrong. It is wrong.
Agenda 2030. As a successor framework for the Millennium Development Goals, the global community rolled out a bigger, deeper, and more encompassing framework called the Sustainable Development Goals, designed to transform our world, lift the poor out of poverty, as well as ensure inclusive and healthy society. On Agenda 2030, we take you on a media trip to the global destination of the future we want. With everyone on board, we focus on the people and their struggle, the civil society and their agitations, the government and her development effort, the global development agenda, its 17 goals and 169 targets. We bring you all the deliberations, insightful conversations, and high-level partnerships on the road to global destination. Agenda 2030, showing on this channel. Agenda 2030, leaving no one behind.
You're welcome back. We still have with us Barrister Festus Keyamo, the Director, Strategic Communication and the spokesperson of the Buhari Campaign Organization. And he's taking us through what this administration has been doing in terms of trying to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, which was signed into practice 2015. You were talking about how well the government has done agricultural revolution and giving so much money into the pockets of the farmers now that they have become so rich to the extent that they wanted to even buy the presidential nomination form of the APC for Mr. President. If you want to expand on this, would you really say the president could have done more, and what are the challenges that he has faced in this very light?
Well, obviously, the room for progress is enormous. Enormous because the president has not even started. You can see that all of this has been achieved, in a context. And I want Nigerians to really, really take note of that context. It has been achieved in the context of very, very limited resources. The president walked into a storm in 2015. The storm was that there was absolutely no backup because the foreign reserves of the country had depleted so terribly. There was also no money coming in because the price of oil had crashed to about $28 per barrel. And so it was tough for the president. 24 states were owing salaries at that point, so there was workers' discontent. There was scarcity of fuel. If you remember, at the point they handed over power, fuel was so scarce. If a month to hand over, there was no fuel at all in the entire country. But everybody felt a new dispensation was coming, so everybody was patient at that time. So the president virtually walked into a storm and began to take, the problems one by one. So it's in that context, I want to let you know that it's in that context of very limited resources, of a recession we eventually fell into, that recession, that he made all of these provisions. Now, just imagine, and that's the challenge, the major challenge he faced, if you ask of challenges, the very limited resources he had. And it was even in the face of all of this, in the midst of all of this, that he managed to squeeze out the strengths and the initiative to ensure that the agricultural sector was not abandoned. So I just want you to know that this president can be trusted with more resources. We know, you know, the opposition knows, everybody knows, he will not steal money. He will not. And you have one of the best presidencies I've ever seen since 1960. The two gentlemen there, the perception, and which the perception is very important, is the perception of extremely honest individuals in terms of personal integrity, the president and the vice. No fight over anything, no quarrel over anything, and all of that. So you can be sure that if they have more money at their disposal, and we do hope that that kind of money will come in their second term if Nigerians do allow that you will see a complete revolution in that sector. He has done so much with so little, and that is the kind of change that they have brought into governance. So I also see another challenge as some of the security challenges in terms of farmers and herders clashes. So we should be honest about that. If, like some mischievous people suggest, the president does not like farmers, or he backs headers against farmers, why would he invest so much in agriculture? It flies in the face of logic that a president who loves agriculture so much, who had invested so much in agriculture, who wants a boost in agriculture, would deliberately support the decimation of farmers and their products by headers.
Okay, good health and well-being is one of the major plans of the Sustainable Development Goals, and you want to tell us how well this administration has done in terms of giving to the people that's healthcare development generally, to not just building up hospitals,
good food,
but also having the necessary manpower.
Good food is good health. And so you can be sure that within the context of the school feeding program, you are also improving the health of the children. But most importantly, you can see that the budgetary provision for health has gone up so significantly. It was about 26 billion naira in 2015 when they met it. But right now they are doing about 80-something billion, 86 billion naira in budgetary provisions for health. And there's another 56 billion coming from the National Health Act. In addition to that budgetary provision, there's a special provision in the National Health Act, for health. And so that shoots it up to more than 100 or so billion for health alone in the 2018 budget. So you can see how passionate that the president and the kind of attention, the passionate he is about health, the health sector, and the kind of provision that has been made in respect of the health sector.
And it has been a very exciting time on Agenda 2030 this week with Barrister Festus Keyamo, who has taken us through most of the activities and achievements of the government in line with its avowed efforts to implement the Sustainable Development Goals and attain most of the targets by the target date 2030. And until we come your way again next week, I am Desmond Utorin, and do have a great day ahead.